My name is Quentin, and I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a small business owner in Baltimore. Equity started in Baltimore out of a space of necessity. We wanted to make wellness more equitable and accessible. Being able to connect and support a small business is about collaboration. Let's bring it together. What I love about the Ivy Hotel, it's not created to be about the hotel. It's truly created to be about the guest experience. Different regard, what the founder Stephen has created for the Baltimore fashion scene, it is so indicative of what Baltimore is. Its culture, it's eclectic. I love to go to yoga class, especially at Tribe. To me, wellness it's multifaceted. It is doing the things that fuel you. I intentionally chose to move back to Baltimore City because we are one of the most welcoming cities that I've ever been to. Baltimore is and will forever be a part of me.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Secretary Day, members of the City Council, honored guests, Live Baltimore board members, supporters, partners, and fellow city lovers. I'm Megan McCorkle, the Executive Director of Live Baltimore, and welcome to the State of the City Market. Throughout this morning, we are going to be highlighting the stories of some of the greatest assets in Baltimore City, our people, like my friend Quentin. It was a year ago that I stood on a stage a whole lot like this, and it was my very first event with Live Baltimore. I didn't even work here yet, and it has been quite a year. So I want to thank so many of you in the audience today for such a warm welcome to this incredible organization. And I really need to give a shout out to the heart and soul of Live Baltimore, our amazing staff. They work tirelessly every day to make events like this successful and provide first-class customer service to everyone they meet. So please join me in a round of applause for Julie, Susie, Nikta, Jordan, Misty, Jasmine, Natasha, Ani, and Crystal. It is an honor to work alongside each of you every single day serving our city. For nearly 30 years, Live Baltimore has been doing the vital work to grow our city. In fiscal year 2025, 1 in 6 Baltimore City homebuyers was a Live Baltimore customer. That is more than 1,200 people who wound up buying homes last year that came to a trolley tour, or they attended a virtual event, they created a profile on our website, they read our newsletter, they got a referral for one of our agents or lenders, or they turned to us for help finding incentives. Those customers bought homes in 210 neighborhoods across the city, in every city council district, every legislative district, from Curtis Bay to Cross Country, Ridgely's Delight to Rosemont East. In fiscal year 2025 alone, Live Baltimore's influenced home sales totaled $355.3 million. That is an estimated total of $15.2 million in single-year tax revenue for this city. That means that for every $1 that Baltimore City invests in Live Baltimore, we are bringing back $13 in tax revenue annually. Now add that up over the past 5 years, and Live Baltimore's influenced home sales total $1.8 billion, bringing in an estimated $77.8 million in single-year tax revenue. We are a small but very mighty organization with a truly remarkable impact. And while we really love sharing our great statistics, we know each of those numbers is a person whose life has been changed by the work of Live Baltimore. A person like Courtney. Courtney was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but she was looking for a city that was affordable, where she could plant roots. And she found Baltimore. She started researching on livebaltimore.com. She took our online educational classes, 6 o'clock sessions, to find out about down payment incentive programs, to find out about Baltimore City neighborhoods and everything she needed to do to prepare to buy a house. Courtney flew into Baltimore for not 1, not 2, but 3 separate trolley tours. By attending a trolley tour, she was able to receive the Buying into Baltimore Down Payment Assistance Grant. And today, Courtney is a proud homeowner in the Penn Lucy neighborhood. Congratulations to Courtney. In fiscal year 2025, we also wrapped up a pilot program called Buy Back the Block. This grant program was funded with American Rescue Plan funding thanks to the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs. It is a retention effort that offers up to $20,000 in down payment assistance to current Baltimore City residents in eligible areas who want to own a piece of their city. Between March of 2023 and June of 2025, $1.59 million in grants were distributed to 117 of our neighbors to make their dreams of homeownership come true thanks to Buy Back the Block. They purchased homes in 57 different neighborhoods across the city. The majority of them were first-time home buyers, and they ranged in age from 23 years old all the way to 78 years old. On average, they bought homes about 3.4 miles away from the place that they currently lived, often in neighborhoods that were seeing a higher rate of population decline. That means they became home buyers in the neighborhoods with the greatest need of stabilization. During its pilot, Buy Back the Block saw $23.9 million in influenced home purchases, generating more than $1 million in single-year tax revenue. And while the numbers certainly tell a story of success, they don't tell Miguel's story. Meet Miguel. Miguel was a renter in the Bridgeview Green Lawn neighborhood for years, but he dreamed of buying his first house. He qualified for Buy Back the Block, and he found his dream home just 2 miles away from where he was currently living. Miguel received the $15,000 grant from Buy Back the Block, but that wasn't all, because Buy Back the Block, as many of my lenders know, is a stackable grant. So he also received the Buying into Baltimore Trolley Tour Grant, First-Time Home Buyers Incentive, Vacants to Value, and many others. In all, Miguel received more than $130,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance. I am proud to say this past Friday, Miguel closed on his house in the Upton community, and we are so proud to have been a part of his journey. Congratulations, Miguel. Buy Back the Block has been such a successful program, we were able to relaunch it at the end of October thanks to additional funding committed by the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, as well as the City Department of Housing and Community Development. Since the end of October, more than 800 people and counting have filled out the eligibility quiz for Buy Back the Block. And in just 3 months, we have committed or distributed nearly $500,000 in grants to help our neighbors own a piece of this city. We hope that this program will help families who already live here become homeowners for years to come. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to the Hayes family.
We are the Hayes family, and we love city living.
We chose Baltimore because it seemed like a good place that we could raise our children.
We were able to actually buy a home where we could afford and raise the kids. Our children attend Baltimore Montessori Public Charter School and Bard Early College. Baltimore has an array of schools for you to send your children.
There's a lot to do. There's a lot to explore and experience.
At Lincoln Park, we do a lot of hiking. There's a ton of trails in the parks that we enjoy. The Walters is free, and we're a family of 6. They always have different exhibits, and they have activities for the kids, so it's great for our 7-year-old. What I love about Tin Hills, very walkable community and feels very welcoming.
This is home for us. we're grateful to be here. We wouldn't want to go anywhere else at this point. Yeah.
Baltimore is our home.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Klump. I am the Partnership Manager at Live Baltimore, and I am very excited to continue our conversation this morning by reviewing some of the latest Baltimore City housing data. Now, over the next several minutes, we're going to walk through what we saw across the market in 2025. We will highlight key trends, momentum we're seeing citywide, and the neighborhoods to watch moving into 2026. But before we begin with the numbers, I'd like to provide some overall context on the following data. 2025 was another stable year for the housing market, with relatively little movement compared to the year before. That steadiness, paired with the ongoing economic and political uncertainty, continues to define what the post-pandemic housing market looks like today. And I want to make it clear that any challenges in the market are not exclusive to Baltimore City. As we'll explore further momentarily, challenging market conditions exist regionally and nationally as well. One of the contributing factors to the housing market conditions is the average mortgage interest rate. And in 2025, we saw that rates opened above 6% and settled into the low 6% range by December, remaining relatively stable throughout the year. And while that consistency brought some predictability, interest rates at this level continued to keep conditions tight for many buyers. Across the Baltimore metro region, Baltimore City continued to be a major driver of residential home sales. In 2025, the city accounted for 24% of all regional home sales, nearly matching Baltimore County and coming out ahead of Anne Arundel County for the year. That's right. There were 7,155 home purchases in Baltimore City last year. And while that represents a slight decline compared to 2024, it is an improvement over the prior year's 5% drop. This trend suggests the pace of decline is slowing, even as the market conditions remain constrained. Total market investment reached $1.88 billion in 2025, marking a 1% increase over the previous year. That modest growth follows a slight decline during the prior reporting period and is yet another indicator of stabilization. And importantly, investment levels continue to stay at historical highs. Homebuyers and investors are demonstrating with their wallets confidence in the long-term value of Baltimore City housing. Home prices in Baltimore City rose in 2025, with the median purchase price reaching $235,000. This change represents a 7% increase over the previous year and outpaces the 5% growth seen in the prior reporting period. And while prices and property values are climbing in Baltimore City, the current median purchase price keeps city properties within reach for many buyers. And that relative affordability of Baltimore City homes is especially apparent when we view it against the regional landscape. As you can see from this graph, Baltimore City remains by far the most affordable place to buy in the metro region. And to put the city's median purchase price in perspective, Baltimore County, which is the county with the next most affordable median price, comes in at $365,000. Howard County tops the Baltimore Metro with a median purchase price of $620,000. And if you go across the district line into Washington, D.C., you are going to have a median purchase price for 2025 at $670,000. In 2025, the average days on market in Baltimore City rose to 44 days, which is a 15% increase from the previous year. Now, that increase reflects a combination of things, including higher mortgage interest rates, higher inventory, and buyer hesitation. But even with the increase, homes in Baltimore still moved faster than pre-pandemic average of over 50 days. And an increase in the average days on market is not necessarily all bad. That also indicates a shift of negotiating power in favor of buyers. Although Baltimore City had the highest average days on market compared to nearby counties, it remained a fast-moving market within the region. For context, homes in Washington, D.C. stayed on the market an average of 4 days longer than in Baltimore City. 62% of home purchases in Baltimore were financed this year, which is a 2% increase from 2024. After a period of decline in finance purchases in prior years, the slight uptick indicates that more buyers are returning to the market with mortgages, reinforcing that Baltimore City is a desirable market for owner-occupants, first-time homebuyers, and other groups more likely to use financing for a home purchase. Okay, now the next portion of the presentation is going to focus on trends at the neighborhood level, and I'm very excited to share that 2025 brought many positive stories to celebrate for Baltimore City neighborhoods. In 2025, homes were purchased in 241 Baltimore City neighborhoods, which is consistent with last year. This means that 96% of the 251 neighborhoods in Baltimore that have experienced home sales since 2010 continued to see activity this year. Of these, 32 neighborhoods recorded between 50 and 100 sales, and those neighborhoods are indicated on the medium purple on the map. And 8 neighborhoods exceeded 100 transactions. Those neighborhoods are indicated in dark purple. 83 neighborhoods in Baltimore City had a median purchase price within $50,000 of the city's overall median of $235,000. Additionally, 68 neighborhoods saw median prices surpassing $300,000. 98 neighborhoods in Baltimore City had an average days on market within 10 days of the city's overall average. These comparable neighborhoods are indicated in medium purple, and additionally, 75 neighborhoods, as indicated in the dark purple, experienced faster than average selling times. Now, one of the questions we hear most often at Live Baltimore is, which neighborhoods are the hottest right now? And to answer that question, we like to look at it in 3 different ways. Starting with where the highest number of home purchases actually occurred. In 2025, the 10 neighborhoods with the highest purchase activity are largely consistent with what we typically see in this category. What's notable is the range represented here, from higher-priced, amenity-rich neighborhoods to more affordable, opportunity-driven markets. And this suggests that the demand in 2025 wasn't concentrated in just one segment of buyers. In particular, the inclusion of Broadway East is an encouraging sign of momentum in both East Baltimore as well as within the city's impact investment areas. Please note that sales volume is dependent on inventory, and this is why Canton, a neighborhood with more housing units than nearly any other, almost always has that top spot. The second way that we describe the city's hottest neighborhoods is by looking at where buyers paid the most for their homes. Now, the majority of these neighborhoods are clustered in North Baltimore, reinforcing its role as the city's highest priced submarket. However, Baltimore Peninsula stands out as a more modern, high-density, and amenity-driven market, and its inclusion shows that demand for new construction, waterfront access, and urban luxury living remains strong. Now, the final way we quantify the hottest neighborhoods is by average days on market, and we believe that this is the most meaningful because it answers the question for buyers at all price points, independent of a neighborhood's housing density or size. And as with pricing trends, we see that North Baltimore neighborhoods are well represented here. This reinforces that buyer demand in these areas is strong. But additionally, neighborhoods like Lakeland, Heritage Crossing, Browning Manor suggest a different dynamic. These areas are often more attainable price points, and when we combine that with limited inventory, well-priced homes move fast as buyers are competing for scarce options. While overall sales volume in Baltimore City remained stable this year, 107 neighborhoods saw an increase in the number of homes purchased, showing that growth continued to happen at the local level across much of the city. In 2025, median home purchase prices increased in 140 Baltimore City neighborhoods compared to the prior reporting period. And despite the overall increase in days on market, 74 neighborhoods sold homes faster on average compared to last year. And now let's take a moment to reflect on the key trends we saw in 2025 and what they might mean for 2026. This past year, sales activity softened slightly, but that decline stabilized compared to prior years, which signals a market that is finding its footing rather than continuing to slide. The median home purchase price climbed to $235,000, yet Baltimore City remained the most affordable option in the region by a wide margin. Average days on market increased, reflecting buyer caution and more balanced negotiation conditions. However, the average days on market still outpaced pre-pandemic norms. And lastly, purchase activity spanned high-priced, amenity-rich neighborhoods and more affordable areas, which shows that interest in Baltimore City is not limited to one buyer type or geography. And looking ahead, we expect that Baltimore will remain the most affordable market in the region, with surrounding counties and Washington, D.C. maintaining significantly higher price points. Baltimore will continue to attract buyers that are priced out of neighboring markets. A drastic change in purchase volume is unlikely. However, the slowing pace of decline in 2025 suggests that this year will bring continued stabilization as buyers and sellers adjust expectations around pricing and interest rates. And if interest rates remain in the low 6% range, predictability alone may encourage more households to re-enter the market. And that's particularly true for buyers who have been waiting on the sidelines. If we see rates that fall below 6%, that may be the symbolic tipping point that many sideline buyers need and are waiting for. Longer days on market are likely to persist, giving buyers more time to make decisions and negotiate, especially in neighborhoods with higher inventory. And finally, we predict that net vacancies will decline and inventory will continue to grow thanks to a combined effort from city and state leaders. And we'll be hearing more about that last point during our fireside chat in just a moment. But first, it's time to introduce you to another person that proudly calls Baltimore both her home and her place of business. She may be a familiar face to many of the folks in the crowd today, especially if you are a fan of oysters.
My name is Jasmine. The food scene in Baltimore is not to be questioned. The Urban Oyster originated in New York City. And when I knew that I was ready to actually bring it to fruition, I decided to come back to Baltimore. The Urban Oyster is contributing to the food scene in Baltimore in so many ways. We've been able to convert people into the oyster religion. I chose Hampden to bring the Urban Oyster to because it is the most eclectic neighborhood. It's a complete melting pot. The thing I love about living in Baltimore City is how walkable it is. I mean, just recently, I didn't even realize that I went the entire day doing, my normal Monday routine, and I absolutely never moved my vehicle. If someone was considering a move to Baltimore, I would say you will gain new family, new friends, new opportunities, new adventures. My name is Jasmine, and Baltimore is where I live, work, and play. Balti is where it's at.
A big thank you to Jordan for that presentation. And I also want to thank our federal partners who are here in the building today, including Paxton from Senator Angela Alsobrooks' office. I want to continue on the theme where Jordan left off, looking ahead to this year. We have a lot of big things coming up at Live Baltimore. And first off, you can consider this my personal invitation to every single one of you for Baltimore's Birthday Bash. We will be celebrating our city's 297th birthday on July 31st. So take out your phones, put it in your calendars, plan your vacations around it. You do not want to miss the best party of the year. Also coming soon, back in 2020, Live Baltimore released a landmark study detailing the residential market potential of Baltimore City. This study helped provide crucial demographic data about the households that may want to move within or to Baltimore City, who they are, where they live, what type of housing they're interested in, and what they can afford. The analysis also looked at how we grow our city. What kinds of new and renovated homes would be enticing for people who already live here or households considering moving here? Well, I'm really excited to announce in just a couple of weeks, we will be releasing the next 5-year update to that study. I want to thank our folks from the Goldsecker Foundation and the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development for supporting this analysis for us. It is going to provide key data that shows opportunities for growth exist in every single part of our city. We'll be releasing that study at the beginning of next month, so please keep an eye out for that. And now I am excited to welcome up our featured guests. They have been working towards that growth potential for Baltimore City. Please welcome Mayor Brandon Scott and Secretary of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, Jake Day. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Mr. Mayor, first question. How much is it going to snow this weekend? I'm just kidding. I won't put you on the spot.
All right. Don't buy up all the bread and all the milk. There will be a lot of snow, but we'll be okay. Just be patient. Don't call me like 2 minutes after the snow stops and ask me why your street hasn't been plowed. But Megan, I'm glad you gave this opportunity. Can all of the realtors in the room raise their hand, please? All right. So when we finish, this young gentleman is looking to buy a house in Baltimore. Everyone bombard him.
Uh-oh. We love it. Starting.
And I was just about to say, I don't miss the days of getting asked about when the streets are plowed, but now I'm going to be calling you.
There you go. We love it. Mr. Mayor, I'll start with you. When you first started as the mayor, you articulated your vision as whole neighborhoods built by whole blocks free of vacant housing. It's something you've been working towards for years. Can you give us sort of a progress report on all of the things that have been accomplished towards eliminating vacant housing?
Well, I think the most important thing, Megan, that it's not just my vision and my plan, right? We're talking about this 15-year plan to eliminate vacant housing in Baltimore. That was a partnership. Originally, it was a partnership with myself, the city, GBC, Build, and then we got a blessing when we actually got a governor in Baltimore. We hadn't had one for 8 years. And now, with our friends at the state of Maryland, working together to eliminate vacant housing in Baltimore. And because I just jotted the number down because I looked at it when we were over there. And we were stuck at 16,000 for a long time. So just to give you guys an example of that, on December the 8th of 2020, when I was sworn in as mayor, we had 16,000 vacant properties. I checked. On December the 8th in 2000, when I was a junior in high school, we had 16,000 vacant properties, right? But I want everyone to hear this, though. And it wasn't because the folks weren't doing their hardest to change that. They were taking vacants off. But we now know that it was never about whether the city, the state, all of our partners had the ability to deal with it. It was whether we had the capital and everything together to deal with the problem. And that's truly the difference. And we are now, again, down to 12,160 vacant properties in Baltimore. But a lot has come together. Obviously, reframe is the way that we look at it, reframing Baltimore, eliminating that problem. But we have, thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Governor, $50 million annually from the state going towards doing that. It's structured in a way that we are leveraging $5 billion in capital. It uses innovative strategies like our vacants TIF that we just announced a few weeks ago. And that is a huge thing for us. Instead of the historical way that you do TIFs in a specific area, we actually using the vacant notices, and that allows us to have more developers and lower the risk for them. Just so people know the numbers, though, the first round of bonds just came back and just closed. We offered $28 million. We received $389 million in requests from 17 different accounts. That's 13 times more than what we offered. And it shows that folks want to buy in and to help into Baltimore and help us with this plan. But it also shows that we can keep expanding redevelopment in our priority areas. Actually, the Secretary and I were looking at some of the areas that we've seen improvement, and it matches those areas, and I think is a very good thing for all of us.
Secretary Day, I know you've been a key partner of the state, a key partner in the Baltimore Vacancy Reinvestment Council, with you serving as the chair. As we move into 2026, what are the key priorities for the council?
Megan, first of all, let me just take a second and say that in spite of all of our partnership, I don't often get to sit on a stage with this guy. And when I do, we're usually, we've each got like 30 seconds to run to the microphone, say what we got to say, and get out of there. Baltimore, we have to take a second to recognize that cities have moments, and they have moments tied to people. This is a moment when you've got the right people in the right places to deliver on the promise of this city. And that begins with your mayor. I say that partly out of jealousy because I used to be a mayor and that's such a great job.
Once a mayor, always a mayor, Mr. Secretary.
But I get to live vicariously. So look, the council just adopted an action plan for this next year. And the priorities are what they have been from day one. The priorities are improving processes, aligning vision, and ensuring that we are together on scale, together on capital, together on geography, together on values. And if we align those things and stay aligned on them, we have a space through that council to coordinate philanthropic, public sector, state and city, and private capital for leveraging all of the outcomes we are after. So in 2026, we will begin hammering away at each of those improvements that we want to see together. State processes, local processes, delivering again on that promise that we all believe in.
Mr. Mayor, you've called Reframe Baltimore something that you want to see made a national model. Are you hearing from other mayors, other leaders across the country that are saying, you're doing something innovative, tell me how you did it, and they want to sort of replicate what we're doing here in Baltimore?
Yeah, I think that the secretary knows this better than anybody. One of the best things about being a mayor is that we all steal from each other, right? We all talk all day long and make better and improve. So yes, we've heard, especially around Reframe. Now, many of my brother and sister mayors are not blessed to have a state that's really invested in their city the way that we are here. So they're not going to get $50 million from their state to do that. But many of them have reached out to us about Reframe, but also about the TIF and how we've been focusing, how we work together with all the agencies, how we're focused on specific areas and how we identify those neighborhoods and how we want to build from strength and have the whole block strategy. We've heard from a lot of my brother and sister mayors, and I have like 2 or 3 meetings set up next week when we'll all be in DC to specifically talk about our housing policy.
Secretary Day, I just mentioned the study that Maryland DHCD is partnering with us on that we'll put out in a couple of weeks, shows growth opportunities exist all across Baltimore City. How will you be able to take that data and make it actionable in your work to make sure that a variety of housing types exist to meet the demand that's out there?
Well, I think what you know and what your team has emphasized, really better than anybody else in this particular part of the housing universe can, is that we've got to look neighborhood by neighborhood. The mayor mentioned his vision about whole communities through whole blocks. We have to recognize that Baltimore is a regional market. Baltimore City is a housing market, but really people are choosing a particular neighborhood. And each neighborhood in Baltimore is unique. It's a city of neighborhoods. And so we've got to think about what does each of those locations need. Now, obviously, when we're thinking about addressing vacancy, we are squarely focused. We're very much focused on, the acupuncture. We're focused on house by house, property by property, address by address. We've got to think about what does this block need and what do each of the addresses need on that block. And so it takes that level of granularity and detail. And at the same time, we've got to recognize that there are a lot of people in Baltimore who I look at as, and I think Mayor, I don't want to speak for you, but I would guess that you look at as the future homeowners of Baltimore might be coming from Baltimore. I love seeing Courtney, amen. I love seeing Courtney from Tulsa move to Baltimore, particularly when Tulsa is putting cash on the table to get people to move there. $10,000.
Who wants to live in Oklahoma, though?
Exactly.
Courtney.
We won't tell him. Is it still Mayor Ryback in Tulsa?
No, I will tell them. But
you will tell him. They're putting $10,000 in cash, straight up cash, not even like a particular incentive, but straight up cash on the table to get people to move to Tulsa. And Tulsans are choosing Baltimore. That's a story I want to hear. But we know also that the future homeowners of Baltimore are today's renters in Baltimore. So we've got to make sure that they have pathways in, that we've got to continue to create, elevate, and prioritize the incentives that help them become buyers, do the counseling and the hard work that goes along to preparing them. And then lastly, we also have to make sure that the homeowners that are on those blocks, that have stayed engaged for so long and say, we love this city, we aren't going to leave this city, that they have the support they need to do the improvements to their properties, to stay right there, to choose Baltimore, the energy efficiency work, the homeowner repair work, that's that critical repair work. That is so important. So I think that's a particular focus for us in the year ahead.
Amen. But if I can add, I think it's important to what the secretary is saying. Agree wholeheartedly with everything that he just said. That we have to focus on our own, right? And that's why, right? We have to be reminded. 59% of people who live in Baltimore rent. Up until 3 years ago, I was one of them, right? Right, and we know that we have to create those pathways for them. But also, I think it's an important thing that we think about with vacancy, but also home ownership, is preserving the people that are there, especially our older families and that have been there for a long time, making sure that they can age in place, and then providing options for them to do that within their own neighborhoods. We're actually going through that with my granddad, who lives in 2 minutes away from me, who him and my step grandma are looking to age. They don't need the big size that they want, but they want to be able to stay in their neighborhood. They don't want to go too far. I'm happy because I want to be able to get my rice pudding as quickly as possible. But we have to provide those opportunities. And at the same time, we do have to be very intentional. And I've talked to Megan and the team about this too, about who we want to steal, especially in the moment that we're in the country. Because people who live in a Tulsa, if they live in Georgia, if they live in this place, the state formerly known as Florida, we should be trying to steal as many of those people that are possible who are literally living a place where they might feel attacked, right? If you're a woman and you living in Texas and your rights might be taken away, we have to be intentional about going after people and reminding them that there are still some places in the United States that uphold the Constitution and our values.
Megan, I don't want to go too far off script, but look, let me just say, that's the aggressiveness you need out of a mayor. You need your leader to be selfish for your city. And you got it, Baltimore.
That includes all of our friends and family members who might eat mambo sauce 41 miles to the south, like we have to. We'll let them play a couple of go-go songs when they move here, maybe, you know.
I want to thank members of the audience. You've sent in questions, and so we are going to try and hit as many of those questions as we can. So the first one is for the mayor. I'm going to butcher these names. I apologize. This is from Jamie Antolik.
Raise your hand if you're here. Hi, Jamie.
I know, I'm like, it's hard to see up here. As Baltimore continues to attract new residential development, how is the city thinking about supporting Baltimore-based small businesses and design professionals in neighborhood-scale projects, particularly in established communities, so that new development feels integrated with existing neighborhoods rather than disconnected?
Yeah, I think that's really a great thing for that question. That's really a part of the strategy itself. That's why we're doing it in the whole block way, in a community-informed way, because we don't want, I always say down to the folks at DHCD and others, we are no longer going to do the days of like developing is happening in a neighborhood, right? Development has to happen with the neighborhood, and we have to make sure that, yes, as the secretary just said, that we're bringing in new people and bringing in that new investment. But we also know there is nothing that Baltimoreans hate than something that comes outside, that sticks from outside and just plopped here and it sticks like a sore thumb. It never works that way here. This isn't any of these other places. And we're going to continue to make sure that at the block level, really, because we're talking about, as we do this, we're talking about block level planning and investment. This is why we're working in some cases with smaller developers, smaller investors. This is why we also going to be focused on homeowners and potential homeowners themselves, to making sure that they have opportunity to go after the vacants and all of these things, so that we can maintain the culture of the community. Because this is one of the things I preach. I don't want to, no shade to any of the DC people in here, I don't want to become DC 2.0, where no one remembers the original culture or fabric of those neighborhoods anymore because they just allow things to come in. We want that investment. We want people, but we also have to maintain the authenticness that, as you heard from Jasmine, that represents Hamden or Park Heights, where I'm from, or Westfield or Hamilton, where I live today. We have to make sure that we maintain that, because that's why people are coming here in the first place. They're trying to escape the cookie cutter and come to a place that still has soul.
Secretary Day, this question comes from Bob. I've seen headlines about applications opening for grants to rehab vacant Baltimore housing. I work with a lot of people who may have interest. How can I just find out more information about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to point you to a couple resources, Bob. Number one, on the state DHCD website, dhcd.maryland.gov, we have a whole section on the governor's executive order, Reinvest Baltimore, the funding program, which all aligns to the Reframe Baltimore efforts that the city is leading. And I'll point you to that resource as well at the city website, which has great set of resources. And I'll also point you to this. In February, we'll be opening the next funding round of Baltimore Vacancy Reinvestment Initiative. That program, that $50 million a year, is going to open up with new opportunities, not just to abate vacants, but to do that, again, kind of surgical effort on those very blocks. Once that neighborhood planning has taken place, that the city, by the way, if you haven't met Tim Keene, the new planning director, awesome hire, Mr. Mayor, fantastic. Good get. You're pulling in talent.
Stealing, baby. You gotta steal them.
That neighborhood level planning that Baltimore City has been doing a great job with, and will continue to, I know, there are opportunities for infill. We know that Baltimore not only has 12,160 vacant structures, but also about 20,000 vacant lots. We want to start filling those in on those very blocks where people are eager for a new housing opportunity. They might want a new home, but they want it in a neighborhood with, as you said, with soul. So look to us in February for that application to open. We have advanced and condensed our funding pipeline. So the timeline is much faster. It is earlier in the year. We're deploying resources faster. We got the money out on July 1 to our awardee July 1 last year, which is unheard of in state government, to pay our bills, to award our money on July 1.
I can attest to this. This is very true.
But we're fixing that.
No, I'm saying you got it out quickly. No, I appreciate it. It's good.
Mr. Mayor, obviously we have a lot of real estate professionals in the room today. What do you want them to know as this vacant housing is being transformed? It's coming online. They obviously have a lot of customers who are interested in Baltimore City. How do they find out about the houses that are being transformed so that they can get people living in them?
Well, the secretary just told you all where to go. I think that, between a Reframe and the governor's work, you can find all that. Reframe Baltimore has it all. You can, no matter if you're a potential buyer, a realtor like yourself, or just a homeowner in the city, you can get that information and you can see what's happening. But I also think it's important too that you continue to make those connections when you talk about assistance, right? We heard $100,000 assistance. It's crazy. I'm like, his mortgage is probably like $50. This is insane. Like making sure that you all are making sure that packaging is still happening, right? Because these things are not. They're not in silos. They're working alongside each other, and we want to make sure that work is continuing to happen. And I also want folks to know that we are not just thinking about this from the housing perspective, because it's not just about making sure that these people buy there. We want to keep them there. There's not a coincidence that we're going to be talking about a group of vacant houses that are going to developers in the area of Penn North, and in that same exact area, we're going to be opening a brand new rec center, right? We're going to be investing and moving the city's TV station, Charm TV, to that neighborhood, because we're thinking about how we can build out these blocks in these neighborhoods to have all the things that will make it desirable for people not just to buy, but to stay there and raise their families there. And we're going to continue to operate in that way.
Secretary Day, one of the statistics that we've heard across the United States, the average age of the first-time home buyer is now 40 years old. It keeps going up. Baltimore's customers skew a little younger, which is nice to see. Yes, we're still very young in our 40s. I would like to point that out. What can we do to make the dream of home ownership more accessible to younger people?
I'm so glad you asked that, and really the mayor already touched on this. So I think there are 2 points in life where affordability and scale are going to matter. Size of housing unit are going to matter to everybody, and that's for the person who is exiting, whether it's college, leaving mom and dad's, wherever, and looking to start out life. And the other is like your grandfather, Mayor. They don't need as much house as they used to have. Empty nesters, and so at either of those points in life, I think everyone's thinking about, I don't need this much house. And so the average size of housing unit has grown and grown and grown. The cost of housing has grown and grown and grown. One thing missing from the chart on the median home price is Montgomery County. Montgomery County, part of the Washington metro area, median home price is now over $1 million. Better yet, median home price on a new home in Montgomery County is $2 million. Median.
If you live in Montgomery County, you can move to Baltimore City.
That's right. I can't think of a better recruiting pitch. And so we've written the Starter and Silver Homes Act of 2026 that the governor and our team are going to be fighting for in the General Assembly this year. And frankly, we need you. We need you to raise your voice and say, there ought not be arbitrary rules about the size of housing units or the size of the lot. Particularly in some of our suburban counties, the requirement for the amount of space, even on public water and sewer. In fact, we're only in this legislation talking about places on public water and sewer, the places where we should be growing, where we should be putting a more affordable product. And it's frankly not just about, do we allow for a smaller house? An attached single-family home of the same square footage costs 30% less in Maryland than a detached single-family home. We can do this better, folks. And we can do it by changing the rules, because we have built up a regulatory environment that adds significant cost to what we are able to produce in terms of housing. And that, I think, is a key to enabling more people to access home ownership.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, obviously, helping people access home ownership are down payment assistance programs. And Mr. Mayor, looking at your budget, you have really invested in those down payment assistance programs, particularly Buy Back the Block. What does the future of that look like so that we can continue to incentivize home ownership in Baltimore City?
Well, the future looks like that we continue to make those investments and try to figure out ways for them to grow. So this is, as we look at the city budget and look at how we're prioritizing, because this is a priority for me, we're going to always figure out ways to increase that. In other ways, this is the part of the moment where I mess with Councilman Gray. This is where you make sure that you guys email Councilman Gray, Councilman Bullock, Councilwoman Ramos, and saying, hey, pass the mayor's budget because he wants to increase homeowner incentives in the budget. We start there, but it's really about making those investments, because we can see, right? You saw those so many families that are benefiting from Buy Back the Block and all of that's real work that's happening in the city of Baltimore. Actually, you may remember this. We were doing a opening in Upton, I believe, and it was a Buy Back the Block family, and I just happened to show up a little early for the ribbon cutting for a house that wasn't even theirs, and they were like moving in, and Dad was struggling with the couch to help them get in, and he just told me, They were renting in Pigtown. They bought this house and they got $30,000 total in down payment assistance that allowed them to now pay a mortgage that was less than what they were paying in rent. That is what we're talking about when we make these kind of investments.
And along that same vein, I want to get to one of the audience questions, Mr. Mayor. This comes from Richard Pozornik. What steps is the city taking to make sure to keep buyers in the city? What are the steps planned to keep this important demographic in Baltimore?
Well, I think that, listen, one, there's our basic operations, right? For me, that's always going to start with crime and violence, right? We have been moving in the right direction. I will not let my foot off the gas, as I said to... literally at like 12:02 a.m., the commission and I are together on New Year's Eve, and I was like, congratulations, we did it. Now we got to do it again. We have to keep that momentum because that safety is a reality for folks and what can impact us. We have to continue to improve our schools, the investments that we're making into parks, into recreation, all the services that the city provides. We have to do those things, and we have to focus, again, this is another important part about making sure that we don't let properties get into distress. This is how we work with folks who may be having some problems on taxes and getting ahead of those things and working to make sure that they don't end up in that situation. That's what we have to continue to do. And then ultimately, I'm assuming this question is going to come, we have to deal with property taxes in Baltimore City, right?
That was the next question.
Well, I can just jump right into it. We've been looking at plans and strategies in Baltimore to lower our property taxes. Mr. Secretary, you're going to have to close your ears in about 2 seconds, plausible deniability, but we actually have a plan to get our property taxes below $2 by 2029, but it's going to take a lot of tough work to do that. We're going to have to rethink a lot of the things that the city does and how things are happening in the city of Baltimore, even though we know our friends at the state are in a tough fiscal position. This is a history lesson for folks who may not know. When we had these great migrations to the suburbs and folks were moving out, basically every state created this local sales tax and they have a split with the city because they're the ones that are struggling. Well, my good friend at the state, they keep all 6% of the local sales tax spent in Baltimore. We've been asking for us to be able to have just 1% of that. 1% of that would allow me to immediately, overnight, give every homeowner in Baltimore City $1,000 off their property taxes, changing the game. But I also believe in when you're asking others that you have to look yourself at what you can do better. So we're doing both of those things. We laid this out in my 10-year financial plan for the city that we just released. We'll make sure that we send that out so we can send it out to everyone so you can see the steps that we're taking internally to also help us get to this point.
Thank you. Secretary Day, the Maryland State Comptroller put out a report last year showing a significant shortage of housing across Maryland. And as a part of the Housing Starts Here executive order, you've set housing production targets for jurisdictions, including the city. So how is the state helping incentivize that level of development?
Well, let me start off by saying I'm a firm believer that this is true for countries, this is true for states, this is true for local jurisdictions, metro economies, et cetera. If you aren't growing, you're dying. And so growth has to be a word we're not afraid of. It has to be something that we embrace. Not growth just for growth's sake, but because it feeds into our economic opportunity objectives. If the pie is the same size and we continue distributing it the way we always have, then everybody's going to have the same outcomes. And we are going to continue to shortchange people in this city and in this state. And so I'm a firm believer that we have to be oriented on growth. And so our housing production goals look at, they take into account all the factors. They take into account the housing we lose every year, and we lose quite a bit of housing for a variety of reasons. It takes into account our growth history, trajectory, and trend lines, but also our aspirations. And they could be bolder, they could be bigger, right? But it is a reasonable path for growth. And it expects every jurisdiction in the state to see growth and to anticipate that. So what happens next is we have tools available. We were the recipient of the HUD Pro Housing Grant. That money is ultimately going to be distributed to local governments to help them write legislation, streamline processes, add staff, improve permitting, et cetera. That money will hit the street over the coming year, and the intent is to help get there. This isn't just some arbitrary government mandate. It's partnership. It's saying we will come with the resources. And then for those who are doing the hard work and those who are achieving results, two different categories, by the way, because not all the hard work will immediately produce results. But for them, we are going to award leadership awards, and those awards are going to help elevate them in the path toward getting dollars for priorities. Ultimately, it's a carrot, right? It's a carrot to say, look, state puts a lot of money on the table, and we want to put it on the table for those who want growth for themselves. You've heard it here from the mayor. This is a city with big aspirations. This is a city with a bright future. And so we want to support those places that are aspiring to and working toward those visions. So the state will be at the table with money, will be at the table with resources, with technical expertise, and with our recent hire, in fact, announced yesterday, a housing ombudsman who, project by project, is going to roll up their sleeves, be engaged, and help kick down doors and help be a partner to getting through the slog of a state agency or a permitting process, and really bring people together. So we're now putting our money where our mouth is. We're putting our people into that fight.
One of the things that's been making headlines, especially in the past year, is investors from out of state that have been coming into Baltimore City housing market, letting properties decay, go into foreclosure. This is one of the audience questions that came in. Of the total number of home sales in my neighborhood, only half were non-investors. How do we change that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways. One, I just want folks to know that we're taking this thing very seriously. For us, I can't get into much of the legal aspect of it, but I'll just say, if you've seen my law department's track record with taking on people with a lot of money, you know what we're thinking there. But the strategy for us also include things like stronger code enforcement, targeting these what I'll say is serial bad actors, but also the support that we have for local buyers excuse me, and homeowners. And this is also why we're looking at it the way we're looking at it, from a block by block strategy as well, because we want to make sure that this isn't just folks who have the resources and can bang in and buy soft. This is also why we're focusing, maybe sometimes working with the smaller folks, or people who are just buying a home, so that we're creating the environment where it is folks that are from here, smaller developers, smaller CDCs, and even when you think about our community catalyst grants, over 90% of the things that money we give out to work on these projects in these emerging neighborhoods are given to organizations that are from those areas and have been working alongside community. And we have to look at it from basically every tool in a toolkit standpoint, but we are focus on it in many ways, and taking every avenue that we can to hold people accountable for when they act bad, but also make sure that we're operating in a better way moving forward.
I think I couldn't agree with all that more. And I will also add, it's time for the few but strong to meet the united and many. We got a lot of people in this city who could be homeowners, and we've got to continue to resource them, get them the dollars that they need. Maybe not $130,000 per household, but Maryland, through our Maryland Mortgage Program, does the second most volume of any state single-family program in the country, behind Ohio, and most of our $1 billion a year in mortgages go into Baltimore City. And it's time we target that. It's time we continue to grow the funding for that. The number of dollars per down payment and closing cost assistance program, those incentive tools have to continue to grow. And so it's going to pay dividends. For all the reasons the mayor indicated, it's going to pay dividends when you've got more people who can afford to spend their money in other ways, because they've got the help to own their home in Baltimore City.
With the Vacants Initiative underway, this question is for both of you. What is your short-term vision? What do you hope to see in the next 3 years? And what do you hope to see 30 years from now in Baltimore City? What's the future look like?
Well, can I flip it a little bit? Because the plan is a 15-year plan, right? So I think over the next 3 to 5 years, right, it's really, we're going to be in the thick of it. We're going to be growing, significantly less vacants, faster and better processes, more homeowners and folks living in this housing. For me, also, it's going to be the diversity of the type and the people, right, that are going to be in those things. And in 15 years, we're not having the conversation because they're gone. We don't have vacants in Baltimore. I think that this is a key moment, as the secretary said earlier, for us, because we're no longer talking about the issue of vacant housing in Baltimore as an unsolvable problem. All right, it was hanging over everybody's head for all that time. We all know now that it's a solvable problem. But that also, it is not just the sole responsibility for the person sitting in this chair, right? Because 15 years from now, I can assure you, I will not be sitting here. But it is all of our, not just the government, but community, private sector, everyone working together to solve this issue. And there is no issue that if put before them and if they are working together, that Baltimoreans can't solve. We're talking about people who literally have saved this country from itself multiple times over, right? And we have to understand that that's also what makes this work so special, because this is people driven by people who live in those neighborhoods, who understand it, who have that fire and that determination, and that are all working together to make it happen.
You know, I'm a person who has a vision for the state of Maryland as a rich and beautiful state with a landscape dotted with great places. And I may have a vision I could articulate for Baltimore City, but it doesn't matter. Your vision for Baltimore matters as its leader. You and your colleagues on the city council, that vision matters. And so where your vision is, what I want you to know is, and all of you to know is, you got a partner in state government. You know, Governor Wes Moore, from day one, has said, I'm a proud son of Baltimore. And without Baltimore's success, Maryland will never achieve its success. And it is no small feat to say that addressing the vacancy crisis in Baltimore City is an issue of statewide strategic importance. We're there. That part is, making that decision is behind us. And so for the next few years, it's about the hard work of improving processes, convincing people that scale and speed matter most. We got to scale up and speed up to get it done fast, to overcome the current of what we all know are the challenges, the externalities of vacants, the carrying costs of vacants on Baltimore city government, the opportunity costs for neighborhoods of vacants. And so process improvement, collaboration, and staying united in that vision. This is a moment that we cannot let go of, and that achievement of being united together toward that vision is something that we cannot take for granted and cannot release.
As we start to wrap up, I said at the beginning of the program that we know our people are our greatest asset here in Baltimore. And so I want to give each of you the opportunity to tell a story about a person that you've met in your housing work here in Baltimore City that has motivated you and inspired you to keep this work going. I'll start with you, Secretary Day.
Okay. I've met a lot of people doing incredible work. In this room, I know Khalil is here, Victor is here, small developers doing amazing work, and just killing it out there. And by the way, Victor, like when you've taken me into people's homes and we've met new homeowners, who
hopefully they were in Park Heights, but that's
some who have tears in their eyes. Like it's such a beautiful thing. But I guess I'll mention two people. One, the face, the muscle, and the brains behind our work with Reinvest Baltimore and our partnership with the city for the state is Carrie Snyder. And yay, Carrie! This wasn't in the talking points that Carrie wrote for me, so she's gonna be really mad that I went off script.
He stole Carrie from the city. I'll just make sure that we know that.
So look, when we toured Southeast like 3 years ago, Carol Gilbert, who is the current Assistant Secretary of Neighborhood Revitalization, she grabbed me as Carrie walked onto the bus and she said, "That's going to be my successor." So you know who was in charge. And now Carrie has been announced as the new Assistant Secretary. Soon to be Assistant Secretary of Neighborhood Revitalization. And then the other, with all due respect and deference to the mayor of Johnston Square, Regina Hammond. You want to find a community leader who gives it all and is persistent and focused and loving and loves her neighborhood, loves her people. The mayor of Johnston Square, who is just doing great work out there with Rebuild Metro, and I'm taken by her.
Well, the secretary just stole one of mine, so it's okay, sir. But no, for me, it's a bunch of folks like that. But I'm gonna get to them on the back end. I would first start when I think about this work, right? The housing work, the vacant work, and Victor knows this story. I really start with my grandmother because my grandmother lived in Park Heights until she died, and literally in the last real conversation that her and I were able to have, we were having a discussion about Park Heights and about the housing. And I was saying, yeah, thanks, Larry. And really having a deep conversation about it, in particular about her house. And I was saying, Grandma, I know they have said this a lot of times since I've been alive, but it's actually going to happen now. And she's like, wow. I was like, well, Grandma, I'm in charge of it. Let's start there. But I said, no, people are really coming together and they're going to be doing this development in Park Heights. And we have to make sure that the folks in the neighborhood know that it's real. And I need you to help me do that. And like you talk to Miss Sheila, talk to these folks and let them know, like, yes, this is going to come. Don't sell your house, right? And she's like, what? I was like, listen, my grandma's house is in the 2500 block of Loyola Northway. I said, in the 2600 block, in a year's time or two, they're going to be selling houses for $300,000. She said, boy, shut the hell up. I'm like, it's a true story, true story. I was like, no, for real, Grandma. And my grandmother, as a grandmother's baby, she knows when I'm really passionate and serious about something. And she looked at me and she said, okay. And like, I know now that she did talk to her neighbors and friends about it. And as Victor knows, like, Loyola Northway is taking off. But that to me is so personal because it's literally, it's the reason why I announced my run for mayor at that spot. It's where my mom and dad physically met each other for the first time. It's the only reason why I'm here is that my granddad and my grandmother bought that house with the money that he made from General Motors, right? That's why I exist. And that's why it's so important to me. But then when you look at folks like Miss Regina, who I've known for a long time, who I said to her, and she tells this story all the time as the mayor of Johnston Square, that before I was even the city council president, that when I'm mayor, what you're doing in Johnston Square, how we're operating is going to be the strategy for the whole city. And then lastly, because this is another Park Heights story, I will say Yolanda from PHR, who like me grew up in Park Heights, right? And to have her and I guess a month and a half ago, be walking up and down Park Heights. And for us, we have to understand, for my generation, I don't remember what my grandparents remember, where they lived in Park Heights and they left their door open and all these things. My memories start in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, right? So the neighborhood that we see today is 1,000 times better than the one I grew up in. But for Yolanda and myself, people who grew up there, when we're walking down Park Heights in Virginia and Woodland, and we see the housing that is now being built, we see the library being built that was closed when we were growing up. For us, it's very personal because it's also blocks that we've lost people, friends, friends, family members, all of that. And to be able to be a part of that direct change, that's something that impacted us so much, it just means a lot.
Well, I want to thank Mayor Scott and the next prospective homebuyer in Baltimore City, Secretary Jake Day, both for your support, your continued support of Live Baltimore. Secretary Day taking business cards over on the side. Thank you for joining us for State of the City Market and for all of your support of Live Baltimore. We will see you next year.
See you at the party.